All right, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the Thunder and Pacers Game 3, preview that. Plus, the Knicks can't get a head coach. What the heck is going on there? And finally, Aaron Rodgers reports to Pittsburgh, and I got a little bit of thoughts on that. All right, welcome in to the Logan Ward Show. If this episode is a little quick, there is a reason for that. So I am a high school teacher, so I'm off for the summer, right? And I have two little boys. We decided, you know what? We're just going to take them out of daycare, try to save some money, because if you don't have kids or your kids are out of daycare, they're a little older now, daycare is expensive. And we're like, you know what? We're going to save some money. I'm just going to keep them home this entire summer. So, number one, I'm exhausted. Number two, they won't nap. It is the most frustrating thing right now that I can put them in their room, and luckily they can just play. I have two little boys, but they just play in there. And I just need them to nap a little bit, but they don't do that. So, if this episode is done quickly, it's probably because, and hopefully you won't be able to hear it on the podcast, but that is because I got two little rugrats screaming for me to come get them because they actually haven't taken a nap yet today. So there's that. Please bear with you. I was hoping that I could do these podcasts during nap time. I was like, you know what? I can keep them home. I can still do the podcast and stay consistent with that. But I guess this all is predicated on if they actually nap. And they haven't done that yet. So anyway, let's get into, I think one of the main topics of this week is an NBA topic. And it's the New York Knicks. They fired Tom Thibodeau after getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's a lot of conversation about that firing and if they should have done it or not. I think there was the belief amongst, and honestly, I think there was probably a lot of Knicks fans that thought this. That there's the belief that like he took us to where we could go. Like we can't elevate any more than that. We talked about Rick Carlisle kind of feeling that way with the Pistons when he was there, and then of course Larry Brown came in and won them a championship in 2004. Kind of felt that way with Mark Jackson in Golden State, where he took Golden State. They drafted Clay and Steph. He had them right there, and it was Steve Kerr that came in that elevated them to a championship team. So I guess that's what Knicks fans were hopeful for. What we have gotten, to be honest with you, has been pretty remarkable. We've gotten 3 straight no's on teams, the Knicks wanting to interview their coach. So Ime Udoka, who of course was with Boston, had some personal issues. I think it was a personal relationship. I don't exactly remember what it was because to me it didn't seem like anything crazy. But he was let go by the Celtics. He's with the Rockets. The Rockets have a really good team. They're young. I do think they need a scorer. They need a go-to scoring option. But I think that they're actually a really good team, and there's a potential that they get Giannis or they get Kevin Durant onto that roster this offseason. So Ime Udoka and the Houston Rockets are like, no, not letting you interview with the Knicks. Then there's Chris Finch, who is a really good coach with the Timberwolves, back-to-back Western Conference Finals, haven't gotten over the hump yet, and maybe there was a feeling that he would be willing or wanting to. Now, keep in mind that even maybe if a coach would be interested, the team has their contracts, right? So it doesn't mean that just someone can interview them, offer them the head coaching job, and they can just leave, right? They have contracts. They're under contract with these teams. That's why the Knicks have to go ask for permission to interview their coach. And I believe they would have to give them some type of compensation if they were to go and get Chris Finch or an Ime Udoka, or their last guy that they requested the interview that was denied, Jason Kidd with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, this one is interesting because I do think that there might be an element of a Giannis potentially wanting to play in New York under Jason Kidd. He loved J. Kidd in Milwaukee. He was a big proponent of Jason Kidd, and he wanted him. And so they have a really good relationship. Is there some type of agreement or some type of communication between the Knicks and Giannis's camp saying, if you can get Jason Kidd, we could really consider you for a trade option? Now, again, with the compensation thing, this Knicks team is not necessarily flooding with assets. I mean, they have a good squad. You might could trade OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges or Josh Hart might be, but you can't really get rid of Brunson, and I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of Karl Anthony Towns. And so what do you have that you are willing to give up, or what do you have that a team wants? What do you have that the Mavericks would want for a head coach? What do you have that Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks would want to trade Giannis to you? So I think this is really interesting because it doesn't really seem like the Knicks had a plan. It doesn't seem like the Knicks had a plan. It seemed like they fired Tom Thibodeau and didn't really have a front runner. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I think that you can have conversations with people. You can have conversations and maybe Ime Udoka or Chris Finch or Jay Kidd be like, yeah, I'm actually interested. But as an organization, the worst they can do is say no. So you go into one of these meetings and you say, you request to interview the coach, probably knowing that it's going to be a no, but you got to ask anyway. But what are the alternatives? Did the Knicks fire Thibodeau and say, you know what, this is our guy, this is a guy that we want to narrow in on, or we have about 4 or 5 people that we would like to hire before they fired Tom Thibodeau? It didn't seem like that was the case. It seemed like they're just going to fire him, and then after that, they'll try to pick up the pieces where they lie. And where they lie right now is pretty much Mike Malone and Taylor Jenkins. Those are the 2 coaches that have head coaching experience in this league. Mike Malone obviously being a NBA Finals winning head coach. But other than that, and then Taylor Jenkins, of course, with the Memphis Grizzlies, who I think a lot of people actually like in the league, like him as a coach, but is he ready for New York? Going from Memphis, and I understand he actually had to deal with the Ja Morant situation, so that maybe gives him a little bit more of dealing with superstars and dealing with headaches and all that stuff, because that was a headache for him. But for Taylor Jenkins, I think people are worried about the jump from a Memphis market that, let's be honest, I think is not super passionate about the Grizzlies. I mean, they're a transient team. The team moved from Vancouver to Memphis. It doesn't seem like it's a homegrown team. It doesn't feel like they are that big of a draw or that big of a media market. They're friendly down there in Memphis. The media is to opposing coaches because that's the only draw they have. If you're in Memphis, you have the Grizzlies. You have the Grizzlies and the University of Memphis basketball and football, and maybe the Titans to talk about here and there, but that's in Nashville. So, like, you don't have the media that the New York City does, and that the pressure that would be on there. So I think that might be the worry for people who want Taylor Jenkins, or for the Knicks who are looking at this. But it seems like they went into this coaching search without a plan. And now, after 3 no's from teams' requests to interview their head coaches, now they're sitting there wondering, all right, what's next? Mike Malone? Taylor Jenkins? I guess that's the only people that we got, and maybe throw in a wild card somewhere. So I don't know what the Knicks are doing right now. It seems like they're kind of just treading water, trying to find someone that might be qualified that the fans won't kind of revolt around. I do think that players got kind of sick of Tom Thibodeau. I do think that was a factor in this. The amount of minutes that they were playing, the lack of substitutions, the rotation that went from, it was 7 people essentially were playing all 60 or 82 games plus the postseason. So I do think that these players got pretty tired of it. However, the Knicks didn't seem to have a plan on what they were going to do afterwards. All right, let's talk a little Aaron Rodgers. I had said last week on the podcast that I wasn't really interested in this story. I'm not really interested in a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Does he make the Pittsburgh Steelers better? I think their over-under's like 8.5, right at 9 wins, which is what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been for the past decade, essentially. I just didn't think that he was going to have that big of an impact. But then Aaron comes in, and we know that Aaron is a polarizing guy. We know he has pretty strong political beliefs and that he stands by them. I would argue that it gets in the way of the team a lot of the times. I think that Aaron is a very me-first type of personality and doesn't necessarily say the right things that I think would sit well in a locker room publicly. Now, privately, in the locker room, he actually might be great, but I think publicly he says some things that might not work in the locker room. And he comes in day one of Pittsburgh Steelers minicamp, and he's married. It happened over the offseason. No one knows who this mysterious lady is, so now this is a story. And I'm not saying that he had to keep this private, right? I'm not saying that him getting married is a negative thing in terms of his play. What I am saying is now this is the story for minicamp. If he would have announced this, a month ago, he said he's been married for a couple of months. If he would have announced, he would have hard launched on Instagram a picture of him and his wife or whatever, you wouldn't have questions about it anymore. You wouldn't have this kind of public paparazzi moment where you show up to the podium and you're wearing a wedding ring and everyone's like, what is that? Right? You wouldn't have had that. And Pittsburgh and the Steelers wouldn't have to deal with inquiries about it. And you wouldn't have to deal with questions about it. I think that sometimes, and this happens across media, by the way. This happens across news and, the political space, and it also happens in sports. I think that there are a lot of times people want to discredit or talk down about the media and give them opportunities to ask questions that they then can say, well, that's a dumb question. This is kind of an example of that. I think that this feels like Aaron shows off the wedding ring, shows off that he's married, and then once he gets more questions about it because he's keeping it private, he's going to start talking about the media in a negative light and being like, they're vultures, they want to know all this personal information about me, they want to do all this. And it's kind of a story and a narrative that he created himself. So that then he could say it was a negative thing about the media. I think that happens a lot. He talks about the helmets, and he wearing a new helmet for the first time in his career because he's been wearing the specific helmet before, and he's like, I don't know, suddenly it's not safe anymore. I've been wearing it for 20 years. And again, it's just one of those things that Aaron seems to be picking a fight for no reason. He could have easily just said, yeah, it's been a little bit some taking used to, but it'll be all right. Kind of like Tom Brady did when he had to change his helmet. Brady had the same type of helmet, and he changed it when he went to the Bucs, and he was kind of dealing with the same situation. But for Aaron, it's like he says they suddenly changed it. Well, at some point, they were going to have to change it. You're just in the league forever, so like you're a part of it. At some point, that helmet would have been deemed not safe. If it was this year or next year or whatever, it's suddenly unsafe. The way that Aaron said it seemed kind of like it seemed a little weird, right? And so day one of minicamp, he gets to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now this is all we're talking about. Now, on the field, I think that Aaron could have a marginal impact. He's still the third best quarterback in the division. He had a pretty good second half of the season last year. In the last 10 weeks of the year, he completed 64% of his passes and was 18 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So he still played well. He had a quarterback rating of 97 in those last 10 weeks. Now, the team wasn't very good. They were 3-7 during that time. But I don't think that his impact on the field is going to be crazy. Now, I think that the addition of DK Metcalf will help him a lot. They're trying to shore up their offensive line in Pittsburgh. So I do think that there are some things that go in his favor. But if you're asking me if the Pittsburgh Steelers are a playoff team today, I don't think so. I don't think that they're a playoff team. And now you have J.J. Watt holding out a little bit because of a new contract situation. It's just this is a lot of pressure on Mike Tomlin to get this work, and I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is going to make a huge impact on winning with the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, and finally, let's talk a little Game 3, Thunders-Pacers tonight in Indiana. Look, this is the Indiana's final punch. This is what they have to have. If they don't win this game, it's over. Even though, yes, the series is 2-1 and you have a home game in Game 4, the series will be over if you don't win tonight. You have to be able to throw that punch in Game 3. Oklahoma City has led this entire series all but, 2 minutes of this series, so it has been a dominant performance. In Game 2 is exactly what I thought was going to happen in Game 1 and did for the first half. I mean, the Pacers had 19 first-half turnovers, and the second half kind of was able to get it together. But offensively, the Pacers didn't get anything going in Game 2, and I think that if they are to continue this series and to shorten the series from a 7-game series to a 5-game series to a 3-game series, they have to win tonight. So I'm not expecting that to happen. I'm fully expecting the Thunder to win this and go up 2-1 pretty handily. I still think that it's probably like a 12 to 15 point win for the Thunder tonight in Game 3. We'll see if I can get in a Game 3 reaction video tomorrow. So be sure to subscribe on the YouTube channel if you have not already done that. Really like the YouTube metrics and so if you are watching this on YouTube, hit the like button because that does wonders for the algorithm, and that's kind of what we're at. All right. So, all right. Well, guys, I don't know if you can hear it in this microphone, but I have kids screaming for me because they still haven't napped and are getting fussy because they're just in their room and are supposed to be napping, but right now they're yelling at me. So I got to go get them. I told you this was probably going to be a short episode. All right. Well, Game 3 tonight. NBA Finals. We'll pick up next week here on the Logan Ward Show. Peace.